Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya
Narayana Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudire
Tato Jayamudire.
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu
Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavate Uttama Shloke
Bhagavate Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nastiki.
So we are reading from Canto 5, chapter 16, verse number 25. So I'll just speak the verse because it's a prose. Yan upajushananam na kadachit api prajanam valipalita klam sweda daurgandhya jara maya mrittu sitoshna vaivarnyo pasar gadayas ताप विशेष भवन्ति यावज जीवम सुखम निरतिशयम एव. Word to word meanings. Yan, which all the products produced because of the flowing rivers mentioned above. Upajushananam, of persons who are fully utilizing. Na, not. Kadachit, at any time. Api, certainly. Prajanam, of the citizens. Vali, wrinkles. Palita, grey hair. Klama, fatigue. Sweda, perspiration. Daurgandhya, bad odors because of unclean perspiration. Jara, old age. Amaya, disease. Mrityu, untimely death. Shita, severe cold. Ushna, scorching heat. Vaivarnaya, fading of the luster of the body. Upasarga, troubles. Adaya, and so on. Tapa, of sufferings. Vishesha, varieties. Vishesha, bhavanti, are. Yavat, as long as. Jivam, life. Sukham, happiness. Niratishayam, unlimited. Eva, only. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The residents of the material world who enjoy the products of these flowing rivers have no wrinkles on their bodies and no grey hair. They never feel fatigue, and perspiration does not give their bodies a bad odor. They are not afflicted by old age, disease or untimely death. They do not suffer from chilly cold or scorching heat, nor do their bodies lose their luster. They all live very happily without anxieties until death. Purport. This verse hints at the perfection of human society even within this material world. The miserable conditions of this material world can be corrected by a sufficient supply of milk, yogurt, honey, ghee, molasses, food grains, ornaments, bedding, sitting places, and so on. This is human civilization. Ample food grain can be produced through agricultural enterprises, and profuse supplies of milk, yogurt, and ghee can be arranged through cow protection. Abundant honey can be obtained if the forests are protected. Unfortunately, in modern civilization, men are busy killing the cows that are the source of yogurt, milk, and ghee. They are cutting down all the trees that supply honey, and they are opening factories to manufacture nuts, bolts, automobiles, and wine, instead of engaging in agriculture. How can the people be happy? They must suffer from all misery of materialism. Their bodies become wrinkled and gradually deteriorate until they become almost like dwarfs, and a bad odor emanates from their bodies because of unclean perspiration, resulting from eating all kinds of nasty things. This is not human civilization. If people actually want happiness in this life and want to prepare for the best in the next life, they must adopt a Vedic civilization. In a Vedic civilization, there is a full supply of all the necessities mentioned above. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Litash Advaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratushe Nama He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpataro brisha sindhu bevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mokam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim Yatkripātam ham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. So we're discussing this from the 5th canto, 16th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is, the entire chapter is based on the description of Jambudvip. So in the last previous classes, Prabhuji gave a nice seminar on the different locations of different islands, different places that are there in the Jambudvip, the mountains, the different varshas and everything. That is to understand the different locations that are there or different places that are located in Jambudvip. And now here few other descriptions are given. Like in the last verse, it was talked about these rivers, and the same is being continued herein. So in the last verse, as we discussed, that because of the flowing rivers, all the people have ample supplies of milk, yogurt, honey, clarified butter, and all the things that were required. All the objects they desire are sufficiently supplied for their prosperity, and therefore they are very happy. So this was mentioned in the description of the last verse, the translation of the last verse, that how because of these natural supplies that were there, because of the flowing rivers that were present, all the things that the people needed were present in plenty. Basically everything they need was provided. Everything the people in general needed was provided. And one amazing thing, one contradictory thing we see here, that generally Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita tells this world is dukkhalayam ashasvatam. And we also keep on repeating the same, that this world is a futile place, this world is a place where you cannot get any happiness. And here something contradictory is given, that in this material world also there is happiness. In this material world also ample supplies of milk, yogurt and all these things are present. So one thing we see is that even though this description is given about dukkhalayam asashratam, even though these things are mentioned, that this material world is a place full of misery, but still when people are like-minded, as yesterday there was a huge class understanding about dharmic and the understanding about how to live a dharmic life. We understand when people are dharmic or they follow a dharmic way of life, there is still possibility that people can be satisfied. People can get the basic necessities, all that is needed. We see so many examples in the scriptures itself, in the Bhagavatam, as it comes about the description when Yudhishthir Maharaj was ruling the kingdom, or even when Parikshit Maharaj was ruling the kingdom. And that time it's described that there was no shortage of anything, as opposed to the current situation where there is shortage of each and every item, and where people are suffering for want of basic necessities. In those times, everything was there in ample. Everything was there in a huge quantity. It's described that everyone was so happy, the living entities were so happy, the cows were very happy, they were being treated very nicely. That even milk, we used to hear the description that cows' udders was profusing with milk, or milk was overflowing from their udders. That the entire fields used to be filled with milk. Now it's difficult to imagine here, it's difficult to get milk even in packets. That also we don't know from where it's coming. As one devotee was telling, we don't know where this milk is also coming because we don't have the cows now. But then the description here is given that how these things were all there taken care when people were dharmic. They were following a dharmic way of life. They were following the different scriptures, different religious scriptures. They were following the dharmic life. Then all these things were there in plenty. Now coming back to today's verse, here it's mentioned, Yan Upajushana Nam. Yan means the products that were mentioned in the previous verses. So many things that were given, the natural supplies, grains, milk and all these things. And here it's mentioned Upajushana Nam. Means those people who are utilizing these products, or those people who are there situated in this area which we are talking of, the area of Jambudvip which we are discussing, those people who are fully utilizing these products, then they are in a very, very great state of existence, we can call very, very satisfied state of existence. And why that is very, very satisfactory state of existence? Because the qualifications or different descriptions that are given. So it's mentioned they don't have any wrinkles on their body. There is no gray hair. So all of in this world, everyone is searching that their hair doesn't become gray, or when it becomes, they dye the hair. Or people don't want to have wrinkles on the skin, all these things. And here it's given those people who are residing in that area, who are using these natural products by the river. So all these things were there in plenty, and these things were not there, or these miseries were not there. There was no wrinkles on their bodies, there was no gray hair. Then it's mentioned they never feel fatigue or perspiration. There was no fatigue at all, or there was no perspiration. Their bodies does not give a bad odor. Bad odor was not there because naturally they had so much ample supplies of things, and they were dependent on entire vegetarian or grains and milk. So naturally bad odor was not there. Because we understand that Prabhupada also says that bad odor and all these things come from those places wherever meat is being taken. Wherever animals are being killed, naturally there will be bad odor in the entire place. Like recently when we had gone to Kolkata, we were seeing the same thing. So many fish markets around, so everywhere there's so much bad odor coming around. Just because non-veg or these animals are being cut and they are being eaten. But here it's mentioned their bodies, or there was no bad odor also there. Then there is description, they were not afflicted by old age. So there was no old age, there was no disease, and there was no untimely death. The death also, they were aware that how much time, how much span they has. There was no untimely death, there was no accident, or there nothing like of that sort. And then further it's mentioned, they do not suffer from chilly cold or scorching heat, nor do their bodies lose their luster. So entire time their bodies were lustrous, their bodies were effulgent. They were not suffering all these waves, the weather changes that happens. They were not suffering from all these things of chilly cold and scorching heat. And then they all lived very happily without anxieties until death. So this is how the amazing description is given, and this is a description of the material world. We are not yet talking about the spiritual world. Even in this material world, this place that is mentioned, that where it is mentioned, these people are living very, very happily, and there was no anxiety at all. Generally we say the place without anxiety is the place we call Vaikuntha, because Kuntha means anxiety and Vaikuntha means without anxiety. But here in this description mentioned that even in this place the people were without anxiety, because there was no untimely death, there was no old age. They were not worried about all these things. They was not worried that when I'll become old, my body will become diseased. So from one viewpoint, if we see all these descriptions, if we read all these descriptions and we don't understand the things in a proper perspective, or we don't have a proper aspiration, sometimes it's possible we might feel, oh, these are very nice. And we might even start aspiring for all these things. Like I was hearing in one of the lectures, one devotee was sharing that these descriptions, many such descriptions are there in Bhagavatam. Descriptions of heavenly planets are given in Bhagavatam. Descriptions of Brahma Loka in one of the sections where one person went to Brahma Loka. So their description of Brahma Loka was also given. How Brahma was engaged in different ways of enjoyment and Sankirtan was going on there. And when we hear all these descriptions, sometimes it's possible that we might also start aspiring for all these things. We might also start thinking that this is what we were looking for. Or we wanted a world free from miseries. We wanted a world free from old age, free from disease. And this is given here perfectly. So why should we aspire for the spiritual world? But then one point that is made very, very clear here is that, and the last point that is there is until death. Or death is also always present in all these places that is there. Anywhere in the material world, we go to the highest planetary systems or the lower planetary systems. And this is by Prabhupada's mercy, we are able to understand all these things. That wherever we go in this world, death will always be there. No one, there might be miseries that might be missing. The person might suffer from diseases, but might not suffer from diseases, might not grow old, and he may be free from many problems that we face in this world. But then ultimately death will always be there. Or ultimately the person has to die. As in the Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartino Arjuna. That anywhere in this material world we go to the highest planetary system. Even if we go to Brahma Loka, ultimately a person, when his pious credits are finished, he has to return back to this material world. And that is why these are just levels of opulence that are there. For different person, there will be different levels of opulence that will be there. For a person like Prabhupada, when he went to the West, generally for people who stay in this country, they feel, okay, West is very opulent. Or we want a chance to go to the West because so many amazing facilities are there. But then for pure devotees, all those things were not at all important. And that's why Prabhupada, when he went to the West, he writes in that Markan Bhagavad Dharma, that all these people, they are suffering. Even though externally they are enjoying like anything, they had all the facilities. 50 years back, they had all the facilities which with course of time, India is getting slowly and steadily. But still Prabhupada was saying that all these people are suffering because they are in the modes of passion and ignorance. So that's what we meant. See here that this vision, when we take the vision of the Shastras, when we always hear or when we hear from the pure devotees, then we are able to understand what should be our actual aspiration. We should not aspire for these things because they might appear very, very nice or very, very attractive, very, very alluring. All these facilities, all these aspirations that are there. But then one thing that has to be very, very clear is all these things are temporary. And these are just levels. For a person with one level of opulence, he might be aspiring for another level. For a person who has so many opulences in this planet, he might be aspiring for higher planetary systems. But then ultimately, wherever he goes and whichever planet he goes, he cannot be fully satisfied. As Prabhupada makes it very, very clear, the soul can only be satisfied in devotional service to the Lord. Externally, he might get all these facilities, he might become free from old age, disease, all these things. But still, he won't be satisfied unless and until he is not serving or unless and until he is not engaged in service to the Supreme Lord. And that's why it's very, very important this point is mentioned, that ultimately we have to come to this correct goal of devotional service or correct aspiration in our devotional service. What we are aspiring for or what is our goal when we are practicing devotional service. As Bhagavad Gita talks about 4 kinds of people who come to devotional service. They are the Artho, Artharthi, Jigyasu and Jnani. Artho, we know the ones who are in distress. That is the majority of people these days who come to devotional service. Some or the other distress is going on in life. Something happens and they start practicing devotional service. Artharthi, people who are looking for some material gain, who are looking for some profit. Prabhupada is one of his purports or one of his lectures I was hearing, he was mentioning about this, about his god brothers. He was telling one of my god brothers, who was one of the initial disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He was just mentioning this point that he was very, very ambitious. He was telling that this person was previously in Ramakrishna Mission, Vivekananda, it seems he was connected with him. And then he became a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but he was still very, very ambitious in his perspectives, in his whatever he wanted. Of course, now those are great personalities, we cannot comment on them, but we can understand the point Prabhupada was trying to make, that the aspiration should be very, very clear. What we are aspiring for, are we aspiring for facilities in this world, or are we aspiring for something higher? So this is Artharthi. Then we have Jigyasu, people who are very, very curious, who want to know more, who want to explore more. Many times they come to devotional service trying to explore more and more, read more and more. But then again, if their aspiration doesn't become clear, their goal doesn't become clear, with time what happens is they also say, okay, my curiosity is finished, now whatever I needed to know I have already known, and then they also move out, because the goal doesn't become clear. So that's why it's very, very important. In the Gita only, Krishna says further that everyone should ultimately come to the platform of pure devotional service. Until and unless a person comes to that platform of satisfying the Lord, worshipping, doing all these activities for the pleasure of the Lord, then it's very, very difficult for him to sustain in devotional life. He might practice for some time, he would do some things for some time, but then with time his faith will go away. Like I remember one person had come, he was asking me regarding this, that I have been practicing all these things from last 1 year. I have been doing Vishnu Sahasranam daily 3 times, and many other things I have been doing on a daily basis. But then my miseries are not going away. I'm in so much trouble, so many problems are coming in my life. Why is this happening? And he was very, very frustrated. And then he was telling multiple things, that I am a follower, I am a devotee of Lord Shiva, I've been chanting this Vishnu Sahasranam, I've been doing that, so many things, so many khichdi he was doing. And then he was telling my miseries are not going. So I asked him that where it is given that by doing Vishnu Sahasranam your miseries will go away. And he started quoting the example of Gajendra. He said Gajendra also chanted the prayers, Gajendra chanted the prayers, and Lord came personally for him, Lord took him away, and then Lord helped him, Lord delivered him, his miseries were removed. So that is what, when people don't understand the correct perspective of the scriptures, they just know here bits and pieces here and there, then they quote all these examples. But it was very, very clear, and I told him the same thing. Gajendra, when we are talking of Gajendra, first we have to talk of his previous life. What was he in his previous life, and how he was practicing devotional service in his previous life. Indradyumna Maharaj, Gajendra was Indradyumna Maharaj in his previous life, and how he was practicing devotional service, he was following all the rules and regulations. And just because he did not behave in a proper way with one devotee, he did not pay him obeisances, that was also mercy upon him. That curse was given, that you do not know how to behave with devotees. So he gave him a curse, that may you get this curse, or may you become an elephant, so that you get this knowledge, or you are able to understand your mistake. And that's why in Gajendra, in the body of Gajendra, when he was in that trouble, he remembered those prayers and he was able to chant those prayers. He was able to chant those prayers, and then no one else. And finally he says, Pareshaya Bidhimahi. Paresha, he is referring to Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. He sees that even such exalted personalities are like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, they also worship the Supreme Lord. He is such a great personality. And Gajendra is very clear that I am meditating on that personality. He doesn't have any doubt. He is not worshipping कि I'll worship Lord Shiva also, I'll worship जो भी anyone does something favor for me, I'll worship any person. He's very clear in his prayers that he was just worshipping the Supreme Lord and no one else. And this thing we understand very, very clearly, that when this thing becomes very clear, that who is the worshipable entity and who are we, what is our position. As Gita says, Mamai Vamshe Jiva Loka Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and we are meant to engage in devotional service of the Supreme Lord. And that is our goal of life. That can only give us complete satisfaction. Until that things become clear, sometimes we also as devotees might become allured with all these things. That these are also so amazing things. And here there is no description of service that is given. So many amazing descriptions of that we can live without happily, without anxieties. And there is no service that needs to be done. So better we go here. Why do so much service? The point is because we don't understand that these things cannot satisfy it in the ultimate sense. And another thing we see in the great devotees, the prayers of great devotees, that the mood of humility that is always there. They understand the position of the Supreme Lord, and even though they are such great devotees, they understand their own fallen position also. Oh, even though they are not fallen, but they think that they are very, very fallen. Like in these prayers of Gajendra Maharaj, when we talk of Gajendra, a personality like Gajendra, so in his prayers also it's very, very clear that how he was worshipping the Supreme Lord, but then he didn't have any kind of pride in him. So if you know the pastime of Gajendra, Gajendra was a very, very strong elephant. It's described that he had the strength that everyone in the forest used to run away from him. Even lions used to fear him. That kind of strength Gajendra had. But when he got the remembrance of the mantras which we had recited in his previous life, when he chanted those mantras, when he chanted those prayers, it was pretty clear that he was not at all pride about all those things, pride about his position, not at all pride about his bodily strength and all those things. In one of the shlokas he mentioned, Madrik Prapanna Pashu Pasha Vimokshanaya. He's saying that I have surrendered to you. He's praying to the Supreme Lord that I am just a Pashu. I'm just an animal and I have surrendered to you, but since you are so merciful, since you are supremely liberated, I have full faith, full confidence that you will deliver me. So here also, in his prayers also, he's understanding his fallen position. He's understanding that he's just an animal. He's not a very great person. He's not saying that I'm the king of this place, I'm the king of the forest. He's understanding his humble position, and in that position, he's praying to the Supreme Lord. Whereas in this material world, the general tendency is even little bit qualities people have, and they become very, very proud about it. They feel that they are someone great, or they have so many things, they know so many things. And here in this purport, Prabhupada takes that thing, or Prabhupada writes a very nice thing when Gajendra is praying to the Supreme Lord that I'm just an animal, but I have surrendered to you. And Prabhupada in the purport writes, everyone in this material world is an animal. Or Prabhupada says, everyone is a Pashu. People may realize or people might not realize, but everyone who doesn't surrender to the Supreme Lord is actually an animal. And he quotes this shloka, Yasyasme buddhi kunapetri dhatuke swadhi kalatradishu bhoma ijjati yat tirtha buddhi salile na kariche janeshu abhigeshu saeva gokhara. He said anyone in this world, anyone who thinks that this body made of these three elements, kapha, pitta, vayu, anyone thinks that this is me or this is myself, he doesn't understand the difference between body and soul. And then Swadhi Kalatradishu, who thinks that all these relatives who are connected to me, all these kinsmen who are there, they are mine relatives. And Bhoma Ijjati, who thinks that the place where he has taken birth, that is worshipable. That is a very, very great place where he has taken birth. And Yat Tirtha Buddhi Salirina Kariches, a person who goes to any place of pilgrimage, any place, auspicious place, just thinking that he'll just take bath in that place and come back, without any desire to associate with saintly persons, then such a person is Gokhara. Such a person is simply an animal, nothing else. So that's what Prabhupada makes it very, very clear here in this purport also. And I could connect with this, that when he talks about going to place of pilgrimage for taking bath, so in my childhood, this is what we used to do. We used to go to Haridwar, we used to go to many places, we'll take bath and come back. But there was no desire at all to associate with any saintly personality. And Prabhupada makes it very, very clear that any person who doesn't understand all this, he's a cow or an ass. And that's what is mentioned in that Gajendra pastime also we understand. Just like Gajendra was stuck or Gajendra was captured by the crocodile, everyone in this material world is captured by this crocodile of material existence. Everyone is stuck here. And unless a person takes shelter of the Supreme Lord, he'll always be stuck in this cycle of birth and death. So as we were discussing this point about the mood of humility, that how people think that they might be doing some little bit here and there and they want the Lord to appear and remove their miseries. But we see very clearly in these prayers of Gajendra Maharaj, his mood was completely different. So it's described that when he was chanting his mantras or when he was chanting those auspicious prayers, all the demigods were also ready. They were also ready. They were waiting that as soon as he calls us, we'll come and save him. They were ready to save him. But his mood was very clear. I want help, but only from Lord Vishnu, no one else. I won't pray to any other personality. And demigods were just waiting there, but he was not calling out to them. He was not asking for help from them. He said, even if it comes with time, even if it comes, and it was a span of 1000 years, he was stuck in that place. But still, even if it comes late, but I only want help from Lord Vishnu. I don't want help from anyone else. So you see, this mood of humility and this mood of surrender to the Supreme Lord was very, very clear. That who is that worshipable personality, who am I offering my prayers to, and who I want help from. Or who I want, he was also asking for getting out of that dangerous position. But only from the Supreme Lord, no one else. And this is one thing we understand, very, very nice mood that they have. And not just for, when it comes for this, not just Gajendra Maharaj. Many such personalities, even Prahlad Maharaj, when you talk about Prahlad Maharaj, he also speaks about the mood of Gajendra Maharaj. He also speaks about the devotion of Gajendra Maharaj, and he worships that, he speaks that was very, very glorious. So we know in that pastime of Prahlad Maharaj, when all the people, personalities were present there, all the demigods were there, Lord Shiva was there, Brahma was there, Lakshmi ji was there, and no one was able to satisfy the Supreme Lord. Everyone was going to the Supreme, everyone was trying to pacify, but no one was able to pacify, and finally they sent Prahlad Maharaj to pacify the Supreme Lord. But there also we do not see any kind of pride settling in him. He does not say, these personalities, they're all useless personalities, they cannot do anything, I am such a great person. Nothing like that. And again, this is very, very evident from the prayers he speaks to Narsimhadev. The first prayer he says, Brahma Daya Suragana Munayotha Siddha Sattve Katana Gatayo Vachasam Pravahe. He's saying Brahma Daya Suragana, that all these great personalities who are there, there is Lord Brahma who is there, Lord Shiva who is there, so many great personalities, and they are speaking in a very, very excellent way. So he was just a 5-year-old boy. And these are great personalities who are there. They were praying to the Supreme Lord in a very excellent flow of words. And he's saying, Naraditum Puruganer Adunapi Pipru. That when such great personalities with such great prayers, they cannot satisfy you, but I'll definitely satisfy you. He does not say like that. He says, when they are not able to satisfy you, how can I satisfy you? So last line he says, Kim Toshtum Arati Same Harir Ugra Jate. That I am a person born in a demoniac family. I am a person from an Asuric family. How can I satisfy you when these personalities, they are praying to you, they are speaking such excellent prayers to you, and they are not able to satisfy? What is my qualification? So we see this amazing mood of humility, even after being so qualified, even after having all the qualifications, even we know Narsimhadev appeared just to pacify, just to save Prahlad Maharaj, or just for the satisfaction of Prahlad Maharaj. But still his mood was very, very clear that all these personalities cannot satisfy, how can I satisfy you? And there he mentioned all these things, that whatever material things that are there, Manya Dhanabhijana Rupa Tapa Shrotajas, that a person may have very excellent skills, a person may be very, very strong in this world, very excellent form, very excellent bodily qualities, riches, aristocratic beauty, but all these things cannot satisfy the Supreme Lord. And only one thing can satisfy the Supreme Lord, that is devotional service. And that's where he talks about Gajendra Maharaj. He says, Bhaktya Tutosha Bhagwan Gaja Yuthapaya. That you can only be satisfied by pure devotional service and nothing else. Just like Gajendra Maharaj. When the Lord came in front of Gajendra Maharaj offered that lotus flower, and that was enough for satisfying the Lord. Nothing else, the material qualifications, material achievements, whatever were there, they were not fit for satisfying the Supreme Lord. And this is what we see, the amazing mood of humility. Even after having that pure mood of devotional service, still they know that all these material things cannot satisfy. Only the mood of pure devotional service, or mood of serving the Supreme Lord just for his pleasure, that is what can satisfy the Supreme Lord. And that is why the very nice point that was mentioned in yesterday's class also, I was contemplating on that spiritual world is made only for humble people, or this material world is made for those who are proud. Those who are proud, they stay in this world, but spiritual world is for those who are humble, or who have this mode of humility. And that we can see in all the great prayers that are there in the Bhagavatam. Any great personality that is there, this mood is very, very clear. Even when it comes to Kunti Maharani prayers. Now she was also a very great personality. She was a personality who understood the Supreme Lord, who was having darshan of the Supreme Lord. And Lord came multiple times to protect her. And she was, in a prayer, she was saying also that you are just like that artist who does various activities and people don't recognize you, but you are the Supreme Lord himself. But even after all that, at last she says that I am just a woman, I cannot understand you. How can I being a woman, understand your greatness? So again and again in all the different prayers of all these great personalities, we see that mood of humility. We see that how even though they were greatly qualified to worship the Supreme Lord, even though they had all the qualifications, but still they had this mode of humility. Still they thought that we are not qualified to worship the Supreme Lord. And the same note is very, very important to inculcate for ourselves. Because one thing that is there is that we also want to serve the Lord. We as devotees, we want to offer some service to the Supreme Lord. But then externally, even though we want to be humble, or we also want to serve in that humble way, because that's the soul's natural position. Soul's natural position is to serve the Supreme Lord in a mood of humility, in a mood of pleasure for the Supreme Lord. But because of all these coverings that are there, because of the covering of mind, intelligence and ego, we also get deviated from the path. We want to serve the Lord, we want to do things for His pleasure, we endeavor for that way. But ultimately when we ask ourselves or when think, contemplate about it, we realize that in all these things we are doing, in all the services, somewhere that internal motive is there. Somewhere we want to become famous by that service, or we want our name to appear in for that service. But here we see that all these personalities who are there, they were not interested in all these things. They were not interested in their own glorification, own satisfaction. Rather, they understood their position that is there. But for us, because of this mind, because of the contaminated mind, because of the intelligence, which is completely engaged in sense gratification, even though we have that desire to serve the Lord, but all this battle consistently goes on. The battle of serving the Lord for His pleasure, and on the other hand, those desires or those creepers, we call it, the creepers of looking for puja, labh and pratishtha, looking for name, fame and prestige. And this is why I was contemplating on this thing, that's why we say spiritual world is a place where everyone is happy, and devotees are happy when they see others progressing. When they see someone else doing very nicely in devotional service, someone else nicely progressing, they become very, very pleased, very, very happy. But here we also want to become like them. We also want to become pure devotees, or we are aspiring for that. But still currently that always happens, that whenever we hear about someone else, or whenever we hear the book distribution scores, externally we'll say that we are very happy, we'll say Hari Bol, but internally that mood always comes. That why I was not there, or externally that mood of enviousness and jealousy creeps in. But then this is very, very important, that if we actually want to go to spiritual world, it's very, very important to think of this, that it's always required to be very, very humble and not be proud of things. And always being happy of seeing others' growth. When others are growing in spiritual life, always being very, very satisfied and happy without that, rather than feeling envious and jealous of them. So we see even in the teachings, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was giving the teachings to Rupa Goswami, when he talks about the Bhakti Lata Bij, how these are the instructions that a spiritual master gives a disciple. And when that Bhakti Lata Bij is placed inside the disciple, then that Bij or that Bhakti Lata Bij has to be consistently watered. And that watering process is the Shravanam and Kirtana. That how more and more watering of the Bhakti Lata Bij happens, then through that Shravanam and Kirtanam, the Bhakti Lata Bij grows more and more. But there he talks about multiple other things also. One, he talks about that we have to protect that creeper from the mad elephant. That is what he talks about, offenses. Apart from that, one very, very important point he speaks about is, apart from Bhakti Lata Bij, there are many other upashakhas that grows with them. We may be doing the same activities, we may be doing the same activities of chanting, reading and hearing, we may be following all the things externally, but internally if the mood is not clear, then these creepers also start growing with. And these creepers are the creepers, that's what I explained, the creepers, the desires for material enjoyment, desires for liberation. So Prabhupada in this purport, he quotes Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says that if on a regular basis, if on a long basis we do our bhakti with offenses, we don't try to get rid of offenses, naturally all these creepers grow very, very high. Desires for material enjoyment, desires for liberation, and we get deviated from our path. And there he speaks about six types of things that are creepers, or that are upashakhas that should be avoided. And what are those six things? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu speaks there, Nishiddhachar, Kutinati, Jiva Himsa, Labha Pucha Pratishtadi, Yata Upashakha Gana. So he speaks that when we are practicing devotional service, when we are watering the root, apart from the Bhakti Lata Bij, there are many other things that are getting watered. And if we are not careful to remove those weeds, then with time our growth of Bhakti Lata Bij becomes stunted. What it means is, we might be thinking we are practicing all the limbs of devotional service, we are doing chanting, reading, hearing, everything we are doing, services also we are doing. But if we don't take care of plucking out of those weeds, then with time the weed of Bhakti Lata, that will stop growing, and these weeds will grow more and more. And with time ending up in a person going out of devotional service, person going out of track. Like recently we were hearing that example when one person became very, very popular, and he left for becoming a motivational speaker. He left the path of devotional service just to speak, just to emphasize others, or just to become more and more famous. So with time, when these creepers grow more and more, and we don't take care to cut off these creepers, with time we get deviated from the path. So six creepers we spoke about. One is Nishiddhachar, which is mentioned as unacceptable behavior, or behavior that doesn't suit a devotee, doesn't actually come in the qualities of a devotee, that does not fit a devotee. Unacceptable behavior or very, very bad behavior towards others. That is Nishiddhachar. Kutinati, that is diplomacy. This always naturally, that mood of diplomacy also comes when we are doing something and when there is some competition going on. Then naturally some kind of diplomacy to win over others or to be better than others. Again, which is a upashaka, or that is not the bhakti lata that is growing. And then Jiva Himsa and Labh Puja Pratishtha, which we all know about, mundane adoration, mundane importance, and searching for this mundane profit. All these things deviate us from the path of pure devotional service. And that's why it's one thing that is very, very important in spiritual life. One thing I have seen personally observed, that one thing that is very, very important is being under the guidance of someone. Being under guidance of pure devotee or anyone who is an expert personality who can help us take out these weeds or take out these creepers. Because it's possible these creepers might be growing within us, but we might not even realize. We might think that we are doing pure devotional service. We might think everything is going correct. But if we are under the guidance of someone, if we are taking guidance regularly from some personality, that personality can help us identify that no, this is not pure devotional service, you are sidetracking or you're going away from the path. And he can help us take out those weeds. Like in one of the classes I shared this before, a very nice example I heard. One sannyasi was sharing this. He was talking about this guidance, or which Prabhupada mentions in the purports, about expert spiritual master. So he was giving a general example. He was connecting that how this is very, very important. So he was speaking about that once there was two persons. Once there was a personality and he has a horse shed with him. He had many, many horses with him. And he had one assistant who was there with him. So they used to do many things. They used to load luggages in the horses. They used to take them here and there. And this personality, the main person, he used to take care of the horses. And he had kept one assistant just to assist him in various ways. So once what happened is, one of the horses, something stuck in his throat, some melon or something stuck in the throat of this horse. And now the person who was the caretaker of the horse, he understood that something has got stuck in the throat of this horse, and he took a stick, he put it or he hit it at the neck of the horse. And whatever was stuck, that came out and the horse became okay. Now the other assistant who was there, he was not that intelligent. He just saw that this activity happened, but he didn't understand what was the purpose of hitting in the throat. He just thought maybe something was wrong with the horse and this person hit it in the throat and the horse became okay. So later on it continued. This person who was the main assistant also with time got the desire that I also want to have a horse shed of my own. Why should I work under this person? And he separated from the path and he went somewhere else. So he also opened a horse shed. He also kept many horses with himself. And again the same kind of incident repeated. One of the horses he got thyroid. Now naturally when a horse has thyroid, his neck will naturally expand, or neck will naturally enlarge. And this person, he was foolish. He didn't know how to actually understand what is wrong and what has to be done in what circumstances. He just remembered, oh, my master had once hit the horse with a stick and he got cured of that thing. So he also took a stick, he hit at the neck of the horse. And unfortunately the horse died. So this example he was giving, the point he was trying to make is that naturally these creepers that grow within us, it's very, very important to always be under guidance and take help to understand which creeper is wrong and which creeper is right, which creeper has to be plucked out from us. And another thing that was mentioned to understand in this example is that guidance also has to be very, very proper. If we take guidance from someone who is not qualified or who is not proper in giving directions, it's possible he might pluck out the bhakti lata itself, or he might give some directions which will help us, which will deviate us from the path of devotional service itself. So being under proper guidance, taking guidance from personalities, expert who knows what is pure devotional service and what is not, that is what will save us in the path of devotional service. Otherwise, it's very, very chance, or otherwise it's a huge chance that in this practice of devotional service, we might do all the activities, we might engage in services, but then we'll get deviated from the actual path that is desired, or actual path we are aspiring for. And when that happens, when we get deviated, then we'll get allured by all these things that are descriptions that we are reading in the Bhagavatam. That there is a place where there's no wrinkles, there's no grey hair, no one grows old. And instead of aspiring for service of in the spiritual world, we'll start aspiring for all these things. And that is why it is very, very necessary to engage or to always be under guidance and engage in pure devotional service, or always being careful of what are the weeds that are growing within us and being careful to pluck out those weeds. So in the purport, Prabhupada speaks a comparison of the Vedic and the modern civilization. This also I'll cover just in short, in brief. So Prabhupada mentions many points here. He talks about in Vedic civilization how the thing was that people were focused on minimum necessities. They were more of simple living and high thinking. But the modern civilization, which he also calls as the machine civilization, which is focused on increasing the necessities more and more. Like one of the examples Prabhupada was giving is the example of a razor. In previous times, there was one simple razor which a person could go to blacksmith, procure that razor and use it entire life. I don't know how they were using entire, but he could use that same thing entire life to cut off, to shave his cheeks or whatever. And he doesn't need to go again and again for new equipments, nothing and all. And he was speaking about how, in that time he was speaking that how so many complexities, so many things we have created just for that same purpose, increasing the artificial necessities. So here Prabhupada gives a comparison that how Vedic civilization, everyone was dependent on natural things and they were very, very happy, very, very satisfied. But in comparison, in the modern civilization, we have got all these facilities, so many things that are there, but then the happiness has gone down more and more. We cannot say that people have become happy by all these things. And that is what Prabhupada mentions here, that just by manufacturing nuts, bolts, automobiles and wine, instead of engaging in agriculture, people can never be happy. Or he's asking, how can the people be happy? They must suffer from all the miseries of materialism. So naturally here he focuses on this aspect of Vedic civilization, that if we return to that Vedic civilization, if people become dharmic in their life, naturally even in the material world they'll have a nice circumstance for practicing devotional service. They will have all the facilities or all the requirements for devotional service, and then they can nicely engage and practice pure devotional service. Otherwise, in the modern civilization, even though people want to practice but they don't have time, they're occupied in so many things, so many artificial necessities that have increased. That's why even after wanting, they're not able to practice, they are not able to give time to practice pure devotional service. So this is what Prabhupada compares between the Vedic and modern civilization. And finally he says that if people actually want happiness in this life and want to prepare for the best in the next life, they must adopt a Vedic civilization. In a Vedic civilization, there is a full supply of all the necessities mentioned above. So all these things will naturally be there and people will naturally be satisfied. At least on a material level, they'll have all the necessities so that they can engage the rest of time for devotional service. Okay, with this I would like to pause here. Any questions, comments? We can take.
One doubt was there that it was Rajendra stuck up there for 1,000 years, but Lord came immediately.
Lord came?
Immediately. When he called out Lord came immediately. So how to understand this?
Gajendra initially was stuck. When the crocodile caught him, he was trying his own strength. So Gajendra was there, all his family members were there, his wives were there, family members, kids, relatives, all those people. So first Gajendra thought, what is this crocodile? I am such a strong personality, I can remove myself or I can get free myself. And he was trying with his own strength. Then he was not able to get free. Then all his friends who were there, they tried pulling him. They were pulling him up, crocodile was pulling him down, up and down it was continuing. Finally, all of them became helpless. And Gajendra realized that I was depending on all these people, I was depending on my own strength. But now at this time of need, what is the use of all this? All these people who I took shelter of, who I thought are my well-wishers, even though they want to help me, his wives were standing there, they were all crying. Even though they want to help me, they are not able to do anything. Finally, when he understood, when he got that moment of realization, that was the time he remembered those prayers. So this 1,000 years was the time he was stuck trying his own effort, because he was very, very powerful. He was trying his friends. I was hearing in the lecture, all these friends were there. They used to go, they used to eat something, again used to come back and pull him. So they were getting nourishment, they were trying to help him, but he was becoming weaker and weaker. And crocodile was an animal of the water, it was becoming stronger and stronger. So with time he realized that nothing of this sort can help me. And that was the time all those prayers he remembered, he chanted those prayers, and as soon as he chanted, the Lord came down. That was the thing. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Another question
when demigods, various demigods came and said that should we help you and all those things, he rejected that help.
They actually didn't came. They were all, it's described, they were all waiting there. They were waiting that as soon as if he calls out to us, he will calls our name, we'll come and help him. But he didn't call out. He was pretty clear that I'll worship only the Supreme Lord. That way.
Thank you very much for the very nice class. So the theme which you have taken, the example you given of one FOE boy who came for something to get this removed from distress and he started chanting wishes of sadness, not able to remove it. And he asked the question. So similarly, see that the four kinds of people who come to devotional service. So if they have continued the same mode, so with time they will become bhakti also. Very nicely mentioned. So in this, so one should have the proper aspiration to the end of the devotion. So in the example which is given of Gajendra, so when he is distressed, he is calling out for the Lord. So can we consider his aspiration is pure devotion?
I was also thinking about the same. So one thing Prabhuji mentioned in this class, all these four examples when we talk about Artho, Artharthi and these, they were also the examples we gave of Dhruv Maharaj in Artharthi, Gajendra in this. Bhakti Shastri Prabhuji was mentioning that all these were also pure devotees, but they were aspiring for pure devotional service because they were doing Pradhani Bhuta Bhakti. Or in technical terms, that's what it's telling, they were spending most of the time in this bhakti, so they were also aspirants for pure devotional service because they were on a very, very high level. So in that way, you can say, but his prayers are pretty clear. He was asking for liberation. He wanted to get free from that danger, and he had an aspiration to serve also, but he had an aspiration for liberation. But still, he is considered pure devotee only. That's what my understanding is. I'm not very clear on this.
Because how much time is spent according to that?
Yes.
So one comment to like when Draupadi that they were they took her in darshan, that sabha. So there also Draupadi was calling out Govinda. So that was considered in pure devotion when Prabhuji was telling that Draupadi was calling Govinda not only for her safety, not only to protect her, but so that I will be, means if they will insult me in that way, so what other will think, okay, they are the devotee of Lord and this happened to them. So Draupadi was thinking in that way. So that's why Krishna came and protected. Not because devotees are not concerned about their own safety or their protection. So that was the intention of Draupadi. But I do not know what is this case.
Sometimes it's mentioned that devotees pray for their safety also to get out of dangerous position. But that also in some cases comes under pure devotional service. Like in this case, Gajendra's case, we call him a pure devotee only, even though he was asking for liberation from these pangs. That way. ठीक है. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की.